Okay, here's our video today, the cell as a city. And it could be a city inside. It's working like a well-organized city or town, whatever you want to call it. So as you can see, there's the cell, and the cell is the basic unit of life. And inside the cell, there are organelles, which we'll talk about in the video, and those organelles will act like parts of the city. So we say the cell, and I'm writing in the space between the cells, which we'll talk about. The cell is the basic unit of life. And we have over 37 trillion cells in our body. 37 trillion. Of course, we have also bacteria in our body. We probably have 40 trillion bacteria in our body. And we have viruses in our body. So let's talk about the city as a cell. And that space you're seeing in there between each cell is the extracellular matrix. It's a fancy word, right? So we'll write it here, the extra, see if we could fit it, cellular matrix. And it's just a fluid that has nutrients in it, and it helps keep the cell its shape. And it has a fluid that helps where the nutrients go, where sodium could go, and glucose, for example. And that fluid in the matrix, we'll just put a little arrow here, it's called the interstitial fluid. Interstitial. So let's write it. Interstitial fluid. And by the way, it's not as spaced out as you think here. Some cells are closer together, like skin cells, for example, they're closer together. And some, like nerve cells, are farther apart. So around the cell, surrounding this cell, our 37 trillion cell, is this extracellular matrix, which has the interstitial fluid. Okay. And of course, we have many types of cells, like from skin cells and hair cells and eye cells and heart cells and muscle cells and so forth, and white blood cells that help us protect us from pathogens, and red blood cells and so forth like that. So let's go inside the cell, and we'll first talk about the nucleus. So we're going inside our city now, because we're talking about the cell as a city, and the nucleus is like City Hall or Town Hall, wherever you live in the world. So here's our cell, and we'll talk about most of these. So this right here, I'll just drawing around this whole thing, this is our nucleus, right? Nucleus, and that's the nuclear membrane. It's just the covering of the cell. So in the nucleus, we're going to say that the nucleus is like City Hall or Town Hall, whatever you want to call it. So inside the nucleus, we have, very important, DNA. Deoxyribonucleic acid is DNA, and it's our blueprint. It's our genetic blueprint. You know, the plans. It's our plans that make us. It's what makes us us, or in this case, what makes you you. It has all the proteins and all the functions necessary for life is in DNA, and it's in the nucleus. So DNA is instructions to make proteins, and proteins are especially vital because they will make all the functions, all the things we need to function. So think of the nucleus as the control center also. We can say City Hall or the control center. Because in the nucleus, right, cells need to communicate with other cells, and they do. And if the cell is attacked, the nucleus knows what to do. Well, hopefully it knows what to do. Now, surrounding the cell, and we're talking about human cells and animal cells in particular, because animal cells don't have a cell wall like plant cells do. But both plant and animal cells have a cell membrane. And so we can think of the cell membrane as again, it's protecting the cell. We can think of it as the guard cell. It lets some things in, but doesn't let everything in. So let's clear some things out, make some more room. And I lost my pen. What should we use? Let's use green. So the cell membrane is, again, like the border patrol. The border. It's the border patrol. It's the guards. The guards. Again, they let things in, and they try to stop other things from not coming in. So it's semi-permeable. Think of the cell membrane as the border guards. Now we have, what else should we talk about? We should talk about the ribosomes. They are vital. We said that proteins are necessary for the functions of life, for all the necessary things you need for life, and it's the ribosomes where proteins are made. So say proteins are made. Just briefly, from the nucleus, messenger RNA, mRNA, will leave the nucleus and enter ribosomes to code for certain proteins that your body needs. So ribosomes think of them as factories. They're a protein factory. They make the proteins. And they're housed in the ER. See the structure over here? That's the ER, and the ER is the endoplasmic reticulum. And there's two types. We'll just say, let's write it down. Endoplasmic, all these fancy words we have. Reticulum. And sometimes we just say the ER. The ER. So the ER, the endoplasmic reticulum, is like a manufacturing center. It's where all these factories are. There's factories to make proteins like the ribosomes. And then also the endoplasmic reticulum, because it has two parts. It has the rough ER, we'll say the rough ER, where the ribosomes are, and they make proteins. And then there's the soft ER. And in soft ER, let's fix that ER. Not emergency room, but endoplasmic reticulum. But in the soft ER, we have lipids are made, and lipids are fats, and they're necessary for life also. So again, the rough ER and the soft ER, part of the endoplasmic reticulum, or I'll just say the ER. So we have our factories, we have our border guards, we have our city hall or town hall. And of course, we need a post office in our city, and that's where the Golgi apparatus comes in. So let me clear this out again, give some more room. Clear it out, go back if you need to, change the color. So again, the Golgi apparatus, we'll think of it as our post office. Or, FedEx, or whatever you want to call it, UPS. So in the Golgi apparatus is where they're going to take the proteins that were made in the ER and the ribosomes, and they're going to modify them. They're going to change them. They're going to add to things. They're going to label them and send them off. So in the Golgi apparatus, we'll say that proteins are shipped out to wherever they're needed. And sometimes they'll be shipped out to organelles within the cell. They'll be shipped out outside the cell. So think of it as the post office, the shipping center. By the way, with the ER also in that manufacturing district, the proteins are folded. Proteins have to be folded, so when they leave the ribosomes, they are folded in the ER. We also have the lysosomes over here. Say that twice. And they're like the sanitation. They're responsible for waste removal, the lysosomes. And they also recycle. So we think of them as the recycle center, or waste, sanitation. They'll recycle old dying organelles, and they collect all the waste. Of course, we need to put the waste somewhere, and it's not on this list here, so we'll just add it. We'll add it. So there are things, and they're called vacuoles. not vacuole. Don't say that. It's not some pasta dish. This is the vacuoles, and that's where waste is stored and where water is stored. So we have waste and water storage in the vacuoles. So again, we have our post office in the Golgi apparatus. We have our manufacturing district in the endoplasmic reticulum. We have our ribosomes, which are factories that make proteins. We have our control center or town hall or city hall in the nucleus. We have our border guards in the cell membrane. We have our lysosomes that are our sanitation department, get rid of the wastes. And very important, mitochondria. I'm sure you're familiar with it. It's probably the most famous organelle besides the nucleus. This is our power plant. Of course, you may have heard it as the power center of the cell. It's where ATP is made, so energy is made. This is the energy we need as we convert glucose into energy, adenosine triphosphate, made in the mitochondria. So that is the city as a cell. Oh, and I did forget that there is cytoplasm. It's the gel-like substance where all the organelles sit, and you can think of the cytoplasm as the city streets. And of course, we forgot our cilia. How silly of us. Well, that's a bad joke. And make sure my pen's running. Somewhere around here. So think of the cilia as antennas, right? We're getting all this information that the cell needs, and think of it as like a radio, picking up the signals in the cilia. Okay, that's just a brief review of the cell as a city.